into the next phase of our understanding of life.
One of the challenges of trying to figure this stuff out is, where did it start? Did it start with the great books? Did it start before the great books? Did it start when we were tribes and we were roaming the planet and we behaved differently, and that's why we are the way we are? But your musical brings all of that into today's reality. Like, it's so bizarre how you can take a myth that was written centuries ago and bring life to it and show us how we are living today on this planet.
Yeah, it's extraordinary when you see what, I really saw that Zeus is really in many ways like so many governments that are turning a blind eye to the essential, most important things in life, and how our corporations are like, not all of them obviously, but they're turning a blind eye to, they're basically abducting and raping the planet in ways that we are all paying the price for. And there it is in the myth. I mean, I didn't have to make anything up. There it is.
Yeah, I think I mentioned earlier before we got on the air that it's like a soundtrack playing in my head in terms of hearing, watching the musical and then reading the headlines. Yeah. And there it is.
There it is.
How did you pick the voices for the key characters?
When you're doing a workshop, you can't audition. So you have to just choose somebody and live with it.
Okay, hey, you're Zeus.
You're Zeus. I was blessed and lucky. Funnily enough, you'll appreciate this, Don. The day I finished writing the musical, I was in Ashland, Oregon, and a woman by the name of Jean Houston, who was a good friend of Joseph Campbell, by the way, and for the last 4 of Margaret Mead's life, she lived in Jean's home.
Wow.
And Jean was married to one of the top anthropologists in the world by the name of Bob Masters. And she herself is an extraordinary evocateur. And so she wanted to see me. So I went to see her the very day I had finished, which happened to be my birthday. And she asked me, what are you doing with the pomegranate thing? And I said, I'm changing it. And anyway, we had this, she said, good, what are you doing? And we had a great conversation about it. And then she said, I want to gift you with something. I know I meant to. And she came back with a little statue. She said, this was excavated from the temple at Eleusis, the temple of Demeter. It's a small statue of the great goddess Demeter. And she said, it's 2,000 years old, and Demeter wants to be with you. So I felt like I was kind of being guided by this force, whatever it
you were.
is. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that somehow these thought forms, these gods and goddesses from around the world are like portals into a deeper consciousness. So she sits in my home now.
That's an amazing story, but it's really telling how things happen for a reason.
They do.
They
do.
I'm not sure how sometimes, but they do.
Oh, we live in a magical world, and most people live as if it's actually material. But the superstition that life is material is going to take centuries,
I guess so,
to die out.
I would love to carry on with this conversation. However, Kerry Marshall's walked in the room, and he wants to butt in and do news. Should we let him?
You can't interfere.
Okay.
Surely.
Well, maybe he's got something relevant to tell us.
You tell us.
Let's take a short break.
I'd rather go lay on the couch than do this right now.
Just want to ask a few more questions about the mysteries, because I'm curious, where does it go from here?
Well, there's all kinds of things. I've been working with the Arts Club Theatre, and they're interested in seeing the changes that happen. Do we take it on to another production? We'll see about that. I also have a possibility with a theater in London and one in New York, and so I'm just I'm following the breadcrumbs.
I couldn't help but sit in the audience and think, wow, this is going to come back to our city in a year or 2 or 3, and it's going to be part of something that's traveling around the world, because it's just that good.
From your mouth to God's ears.
No, it was just magical to be part of that moment. So it's got to be an interesting journey for you.
It's a really interesting journey because, I didn't write it with anything in mind other than exploration. And then when when Hecate, the old crone goddess, the goddess of the moon, the night, and magic, who is kind of the mentor to Demeter and Persephone, when she turned out to be this fabulous character, an old New York Bronx Jewess, I just went, really? So I'm following these things that emerge.
It was very funny.
I just follow these things that emerge and just say, okay. And then when the, backroom deals between the big boys came out, when Zeus and Hades make their deal over Persephone, I had to laugh and say, oh,
it works.
Okay, I'll
But
go
again,
there.
it all was part of the flow. It all worked with it. Something that struck me about the musical, and I want to go back a little bit, is that you had 19 people on stage. You had a theater that was essentially open to the public. And one of the conversations I have going on in my head is that Vancouver's art scene is not very good, according to some.
Oh, I think Threshold Theater, they do this project called In Tune, of which we were a part. The Arts Club Theater worked with them. They co-produced The Mysteries. And they did several musicals. And their mandate is to help Canadian artists who have written musicals to get their musicals out and to have a listen to them. And I can't tell you the value I've received from being able to bring this music to this point. And Ed Henderson and I mean, we've worked for months and months and months together doing the arrangements. And I've worked for years and years and years. And you do it all on spec. You have no idea if it'll ever go anywhere, ever have a life. And In Tune gave us that opportunity to hear it. And I am so grateful because, the Arts Club supplied the theater, and they shared in the money that they had raised to be able to pay the actors. And the actors, of course, all have given me their feedback of what their character, what they felt was missing, what they felt they would like more
to do more of. Yeah.
And I've learned a lot. And I can't imagine how it's going to morph, but I'm going to follow it.
Yeah, it's an interesting discussion with regards to philanthropy, with regards to funding the arts, with regards to promoting all types of art, however wide that palette becomes. But it was really impressive to see 19 people on stage and watch this process of supporting the arts live and in person.
It was huge.
It's a really important process.
Well, I think also, when I was chair of the BC Arts Council, I had this vision of a little video. In those days, they used to put out little things on the TV where you could, that were like community statements. And I had just a couple sitting on a designer couch in fabulous clothes with a gorgeous handmade pottery bowl and a big screen, and they were watching ballet with gorgeous music, and they had books and paintings on the wall. And in 1 minute, the paintings disappear off the wall, the books disappear off the shelf, the design goes out of the curtain and out off the carpet, the couch turns into a plain couch, and finally the music stops and the ballet ceases and the TV's blank, and then the bowl disappears and they're covered in popcorn, then their clothes disappear, and it stops and it says, "Life is naked without the arts."
It's perfect and very true.
And do you notice how when he was talking about the professions people value the most, the artists didn't
show up
anywhere.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing, but artists have helped to move culture forward, and are barely noticed how much they give us.
The thing that I find fascinating is that art teaches us, art tells us who we are, art shares our stories.
Yeah.
And we can go back 100,000 years and tell those stories or share them. So, and whether it's in pottery or whether it's in fabric or whether it's in words,
wall paintings,
song. Yeah. So no, it's quite fascinating. You've been around long enough, and I say that very respectfully, to have followed Canadian content regulations before there were any.
Yeah.
To where there are lots now. And I think the question is, are we doing enough for the arts, or do we need to do more?
I think we need to do more. arts are the first thing to be dropped when education is running out of funds. I think that when children learn how to create, you start developing the mind in what is the most important thing, which is imagination. What can we imagine? What can we envision is possible? And kids who spend all their time now on devices,
Yeah.
they become voyeurs of other people's creativity and sometimes never learn. Whereas when you grow up with just a stick, and it has to be your sword and your whatever, you start to learn to imagine. And I know when I was in school, because I wasn't a good student, because I wasn't really interested, I was watching the flag moving in the wind outside the window, or whatever. I think it wasn't until I discovered.
I think we were in the same class.
Probably. And then, I became interested in music, and my life blossomed, and I had to do it on my own.
Yeah.
There was no support for it at that time. And I'm so grateful that I had a path to follow. It was just grace. It was a gift.
We've pretty well talked about the mysteries, and I could continue because it's such a great musical. But I want to ask you about your childhood, because I know that you love mythology. I know that you love this dark stuff, the feminine, and you grew up in Africa.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, is there an influence in there?
The thread, it goes right back to my childhood.
Okay.
I grew up on a sugarcane farm in Zululand.
Wow.
Our closest neighbors were 30 miles away, the closest white people. So I grew up with black Zulu people, or Xhosa. And I had a nanny, Gosololo, who was fantastic. And she was so embodied. She, my culture, my personal white culture was very proper, very British, wonderful parents, but very British. And Gosololo was not British.
Gosololo. Beautiful name.
Isn't that a gorgeous
Yeah.
name, Gosololo? And Gosololo, she had this laugh you could hear from any room in the house. She had a body. She was embodied. And I remember once coming in and she was weeping. She used to get, on her day off, she could return to her family. And the rest of the time, she was with us. And she never withheld her love from us, even though we were in the thick of apartheid at that time. And she taught me about, she was my first experience with mystery, because she smelled so rich and deep. Her body odor was so delicious to me. And she laughed fully and she wept fully. And that was not happening in my culture
I bet.
at all.
Yeah.
And then we'd go down to the cane field in the morning and hear the men starting to work the field. And deep guttural noises and sounds. And then the music would begin singing from the different parts of the field. And it would all be harmonic. It would all work together. But each one was doing their own body rhythm.
That's magic.
It was magic. And then at night, I can remember, I would have to say my very first, quote, spiritual opening happened at 3 or 4 years old. I used to wake up very early, still do. I'm a 5 o'clock in the morning gal. And I can remember every morning for years, as I would hear the rooster crow and I would start to awaken, I would have this feeling, oh no, I'm going to dream her again. I'm going to get stuck. Don't get stuck dreaming. Don't get stuck dreaming. And then suddenly I'd sit up in bed and I'd look at my hands, always the same thing, look at my hands and say, oh no, I'm stuck being her again. Who am I when I'm not dreaming I'm Anne? And that went on for years. And then years later, I was reading a book by Carlos Castaneda. And one of the things he said was, Don Juan said is that when you're having